The following podcast, I sat down with Ami Kozak from Ami's House podcast and a lot of other awesome things. He's a comedian. He's a musician from the Distant Cousins. It's a band. The guy is so outspoken about the Israel topic. We get to speak all about that and anti-Semitism and comedy and music. And I'm a huge fan, so it's a little bit of a fanboy podcast. Thoroughly enjoyed it. He's besides for being hilarious, he is very intelligent and just has a wealth of knowledge and an experience. So it was so awesome. Remember to like and follow. It's very important for the algorithm. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to the Brainstorm podcast. And now, your host, Sonny Perlman.
We're live.
What's up, Sonny?
You know what that clap was about?
Sync? Of course.
Yeah. You know everything.
I have a podcast, you know.
Yes, you have a podcast. Okay, so I am so excited to have you.
Thank you.
And there's a bit of a backstory why I have you. First of all, thank you for coming. That's the real story because you came.
I'll come to Pomona any day.
But, okay, so first of all, for a long time, I've been totally loving your podcast and loving your comedy. And then I fully was like, I need to talk to this guy, and I sent you a message then, and then I went off the radar. So let me explain it. You all of a sudden went from just being this great entertainer with awesome material and awesome stuff, and you went and you just jumped into this Israel topic like a crazy person.
Well, when the world's gone mad,
but
one must go mad with it. Is this dangerous?
No, I don't think so. So it was fascinating to me, and I did the same thing. I don't think I'm anywhere near your level of fame or anything like that, but I just made a couple of messages on my Instagram, and my Instagram, I get some hits and people watch it a little bit. They went super viral for me, but it was all hatred, like straight hatred.
That's fun.
I don't know where these guys came from.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're bots. I don't know if there's anything, but it went straight hatred. And what happened was, and I was all pumped up. I'm ready to go at this. And then I just literally went into a straight depression. Like, I can't deal with this. I've been studying history forever. I'm crazy about that. And I have this thing. I can't look at Holocaust stuff, which is crazy because if you're studying history, that's half the books. But I can't deal. I can't go through Yad Vashem without like closing my eyes. Like, I can't handle it. I'm a big empath, and I work with people, and it's really hard. And all of a sudden, it became so real. Like, October 7th was bad, right? And then this coming out. Also, I was on Meaningful People then, and I also came out about this Israel topic, and lots of hate came my way. And I got off the internet, and that's where I got in contact with you. And I'm like, because you were also someone who that wasn't your mission, as far as I could tell before that.
Right.
Maybe you had other missions, but it wasn't like, I'm sure you were very tziyoni, but I'm saying but it wasn't coming out. And I also wasn't doing that. Anyway, so that's when I got in touch with you, and then I dropped off the radar, and I stopped reaching out to you because I was like, I can't talk about this Israel topic. Right. Just to finish up, I'm ready.
Okay, good. I was going to channel a Bill Burr and say, if you want to fight this, you got to get over that. You got to get over that. If you can't look at the images, how are you going to fight it? It's not a perfect Bill Burr, but he's like, yeah, you got to get over that. Looks like you are, though, so good.
So I'm getting over it. I'm getting over it because my sister is wildly activist over there. Her kids are at war, and she came in. She's collecting money for bulletproof vests and stuff. And I was like, what am I doing?
I don't judge anyone in terms of how they're able to process all the gruesome, horrific bombardments of images and traumatic events that have taken place. People have different ways of processing it. I force myself to watch everything, to look at everything. Especially in the days after October 7th, I had to make it real for myself because I knew it was happening and what was going on. And this felt like a moment in time where the sort of ancestral DNA of what would you have done in past times when Jews were being massacred, or there were atrocities, or in the era of the Holocaust? All four of my grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and we certainly looked at all these images when it was too late. We looked at it commemoratively, and were raised on that trauma of being aware to never let it happen again. So when it literally did, I felt I had no choice but to face the evil head on and look at it and address it. And I didn't never use my social media or public platforms as a place for politics, because that just wasn't what it was. It served as a medium to entertain people.
Right.
But for several reasons, one being this issue, of course, hits close to home. It is personal. So, unlike a lot of other, horrible things that happen in the world, all objectively bad, not one is necessarily worse than the other. But to me, subjectively, this issue hit close to home. I always resented some people calling me out saying, how come you're only speaking out now about this issue? There's been plenty of things. It's like, hey, I'm not invalidating all of the other terrible atrocities around the world. You're just personally invalidating mine. You're saying I'm not allowed to have a personal connection to this because there's other things going on. You wouldn't go to somebody who had a personal trauma in their life, lost a loved one or a parent, and say, yeah, listen, I know your father died, but do you know there's other parents out there that have died too? You would never say that to that person because it means something different. I think a lot of people feel this sort of shame in feeling particular or exclusive about certain issues, but that's how life works. There's objective morality. Murder and rape are objectively bad no matter where they occur in the world. When it occurs in an area close to home for you, you react differently. That's how human beings work. We have our communities, we have our families, we have our connective tissue to different things and different causes, and that's fine.
But I want to tell you, I think it's a double standard. You'll get back to it. When I was in graduate school for social work, and it was fascinating because I was in graduate school where there were all different types of people there from all different religions, and when I said that my goal is to help my community and to go back, there literally was a lot of pushback, like open your mind, see the world. And like when I had, let's say, an African-American student that was in the same class as me, and they were like, I want to go back and help my people. They were like celebrated, and and I was like, what the hell? Yeah. This was also in Yeshiva University, which was kind of weird. But it's very similar. I feel like
you got pushback in Yeshiva University for wanting to help the Jewish community?
Yeah. Is that crazy?
What? Grad school for social workers?
Yeah. Because it was very, very open-minded. And Jewish open-minded means we help everybody else and not ourselves.
Yeah, at YU that would confuse me. I would get it at like JTS or something like that. But there's been in the collective community, everyone's uncomfortable with this idea of
the graduate school's
exclusion or exclusivity or preferences. But that's how human beings are. I'm a Jew, but I'm also a Kozak. So my parents mean a little bit more to me than someone else's parents.
Right.
People get uncomfortable with this subjective experience we all live in, that one's own children mean a little more to them than even the neighbor's children. Doesn't mean the neighbor's children don't have equal value. Objectively, subjectively, we have different values. Yeah. And that's okay. And when our personal community is affected and we have common culture and history, we're going to speak out about this. Now, I took exception and used my platform to sort of say some of the things, one, because it was close to home, but two, this was not a political issue to me. This was a good and evil issue. This was an issue of morality and seeing a world that had become depraved a la 1939, where good is bad and bad is good, where murder and self-defense are conflated and confused, where moral equivalences are being drawn. And I'm like, hey, it's kind of hard to entertain in a civil society when it's not civil, when human beings are not protected across the board or respected in terms of if you're Jewish or Israeli, you matter less and you are dehumanized. I just don't think comedy really, at least for a time being, can exist in a world like that.
Right.
Like, to be able to make fun of things and have fun presumes an understanding that we all respect our basic civil rights and human rights to live with dignity and protection from barbarism and savagery. So when the world confuses that, it feels a little funny to just start joking around. And eventually I did turn and go back to satire and comedy, and it's still there. At the end of the day, I added this dimension to what I was doing. It ended up, I took like a hit in terms of followers, which was fine, and then I ended up deepening my relationship and made up for that. So it didn't really matter. So that was sort of the turning point for me. October 7th was a turning point in my realization of how broken the world was especially around anti-Semitism. I didn't have the Trump derangement syndrome of anti-Semitism where I thought the tiki torch people are everywhere. I always associated them as being marginal.
Right.
And I still somewhat feel that way, although I'm seeing a really disturbing ascendance of right-wing anti-Semitism, which we can talk about.
Right.
But it wasn't where the tiki torch people were freaking me out. I'm like, yeah, they're assholes. Can I say that? Sorry.
Yeah.
They're nasty folks, but they are marginal. They're not ascendant in the culture. You don't see like KKK shows on Disney Plus. To me, it was more that the far left was where a lot of the deep-seated problems were with anti-Semitism, and they're much more mainstream in the culture, in academia, in politics, in corporate America. These worst ideas of the left are much more prevalent,
Right.
and after October 7th, that was revealed. And so it even shocked me how unapologetic it was, the gut-wrenching anti-Semitism that just burst through the scene.
Well, I have a question about it because I actually, on the way in, I showed you that on my car I have an Israeli flag. I was going to mention it. The reason I put it on because it's just
Zionist mobile.
Yeah, I have a Zionist mobile.
Disgusting.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. First of all, I don't see anybody having them up, and maybe I'm just like I'm off. Like we're not supposed to have them up, but it's just me. You know, my country's at war. Like I put it up. So I had two interesting things. The first thing was I just assumed everybody else would have them up, and I don't see them. So that was interesting. But the other thing that I noticed is that I, in person, never get any. I got one negative response. I've been had them up for months. I even have extra ones because I made out of such garbage. I just when it gets, I just put up another one just to have one. I think I got one negative response in person, and people are like, "You got to take that off. They're going to break your windows." And I'm not getting it. So what's kind of confusing is because I'm online, and people are just raging, and it's just it's horrible. So my question is like, are you seeing this in actual person? You meet a guy, and you're like, you're wearing Jewish stars, and you experience this in regular life. Like I'm wondering if we're all being like gaslighted, like I have in a weird way.
When I go out in public, just to stay safe, I wear a keffiyeh and cover my whole face, so no one knows that it's me. But
it's the safest dress to wear now, anyway.
Here's the
you
thing.
can do whatever the hell you want.
I do. There is these two simultaneous perceptions that exist. I think when we talk about the masses and the majority of the world being against Israel and Israeli support for Israel collapsing across the West, the anti-Zionist movement, the people who hate Israel, are trying to appeal to that, saying, look, everyone's against you. And there's a part of me that believes that, like, yes, it's super concerning to see these masses across Europe, across college campuses demonstrating against Israel. But I still, deep down, believe that the majority of people are just more quiet or uninformed. And when they see this stuff, when they see encampments, when they see hoodlumism and destruction and calls to end Israel and the West and the United States, when they see property destruction and vandalism, they might not know how to formulate their dissent for it or their disapproval for it. So that's why I think it's important to stand up and articulate a pro-Israel position on these things. Right. Because once you do and you break through that, what the pro-Palestinian movement has successfully done, the pro-Hamas movement now as it's manifest, is make it sort of like controversial to support Israel and be against anti-Semitism in a way. They've said like, what are you, a Zionist? Like it's a dirty word.
Right.
So I think to speak out and say, yeah, and not say like, not try to cede the territory and make concessions. Say like, yeah, I totally am. I totally support Israel, and I totally support Israel's right to defend itself. And you make that case and call out what you see. I think an actual majority of sensible people, onlookers, either people who already support Israel but don't know how to formulate that position, or they're watching and they're impartial, but they're like, yeah, I don't know much about this situation, but I know I'm not for that. Intifada, revolution, breaking down windows, kicking down Grand Central Station. Those aren't pro-Israel rallies doing that. So this isn't equal across the board. So being able to cut through that confusion with clear, precise language, moral language on the issue is important. And for those of us who can do that, I think that appeals to the majority that's actually out there.
Right.
But
so the majority...
The minority is focused. They have a message. They have an ideology. And the majority might just be other people with other concerns in life, but they're decent, good people. And when they see that their values align much more with the pro-Israel side if you just explain what it is, versus these protesters and this Hamas ideology, or just whatever, this anti-Western, I would say anti-Israel, anti-Western, anti-Zionist ideology. That's not something they would align themselves with or stand in solidarity with at all.
Right.
If you just kind of
so let me ask you
tell
a
them
question.
what they're saying, like, don't take it from me, take it from them. You'll never see an American flag in the encampments. You won't see
that's
a
not
pro-Western
happening.
flag there. And any vandalism, for the most part, across, like when things erupt, any windows being kicked down at Grand Central or flags being turned down or statues, you're not seeing that at pro-Israel rallies.
Right.
So,
well, has anything changed in you since, let's say, you were active very, and I want to ask you about Candace Owens.
Yeah.
Because I thought you were just amazing on that one. But has anything changed in you since October 7th, basically? I mean, like your views, your thoughts, your...
Yeah, I like I said before, I was not as concerned or hysterical about sort of of anti-Semitism, even as a grandchild of Holocaust survivors. I wasn't one of these people. All four of my grandparents are Holocaust survivors, but I wasn't one of these kids like, it could happen in America. We got to always be prepared to just bounce at any moment. Got to make sure we got to move to Israel at some point for safety. I'd be like, all right, relax. It's America. It's not going to happen here. And I feel differently about that now.
You feel differently.
I think everybody, how could you not feel differently? Just to see how a... seemingly, I think post-COVID and post this, you see how people can completely turn on their basic decency and civil and respect for certain liberties and respect for individuals can just turn on a dime.
Well, I think it's amazing.
And this has come in the form of anti-Semitism, and in COVID, you started to see how people just turn on each other.
Yeah.
And the way people are willing to not respect anybody's individual decisions, and the way people are willing to say, like, become completely tribal. And it brought out the worst in everybody, in a sense. But I would say, like in the more post-October 7th world, you start to see like how easily the mob... Evil is usually committed by people who think they're doing something good. Not people who are like, I'm going to be the bad guy now. I think I like being the villain.
I don't think anybody ever thinks
people
they're the
don't
bad
think
guy.
that. Everyone's the good guy in their own story.
Right.
So the Nazis thought they were purifying the race. They were doing something good. They were cleansing the world of the dirty Jews who were, who were the vermin in our society, who were making things bad. We're going to make it better. We're going to cleanse the world of Israel. You see all the same language being used in anti-Zionist circles, the same exact language. So the ominous parallels to me are all of a sudden right in front of you, front and center, and I'm like, okay. So that changed for me. The other things, I think I became a little more sensitive to how people, use... Like I'm right of center, libertarian, whatever you want to call it in terms of free speech absolutism. I think sunlight's the best disinfectant, and it's good to speak out on issues. But, the way people talk about the just asking questions routine and talking about Jews generally and using the term generically and extrapolating and making generalities about Jews and, the Jews behind this has made me more sensitive a little bit to when we talk about other communities. And not being so precise, even if factually we have a point to make. When you talk about African Americans and you talk about policy, a lot of conservatives do that very loosely. And when you talk about Muslims and you talk about Islamic terrorism and when you talk about statistics and stuff, you may be factually right, but you also have to be conscious of the fact of what you're saying may be emboldening people who don't have good intentions.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's important to talk about all these issues and be precise and be specific. But just because you don't mean for something to come across a certain way, it doesn't mean it can't have effects on people who do have nefarious intentions. And seeing it in the form of anti-Semitism, I do believe there's a lot of people who don't hold ideologically anti-Semitic views towards Jews, but when they speak, and we can get to the specifics, when they speak about stuff, they end up emboldening a lot of the worst anti-Semitic tropes and using that even inadvertently, which provides a lot of red
It's so
meat.
hard not to do that with the free speech. You're just saying what's on your mind.
Yeah, and I don't think I at the same time it's not cool to call. I think the term racist has been overused,
right.
Calling everybody that anybody disagree with. The left called the right that for years on everything, and you saw anti-Semitism being used that way too, with groups to call everything that was misunderstood about the Jewish community or curious about the Jewish community, anti-Semitic, and it's done a great disservice. At the same time, not every situation is alike, and when you see real anti-Semitism in front of you, to say, I'm not going to call that up because I'm a free speech absolutist is ridiculous.
Right.
So you got to be able
I also
to walk
have a
and chew gum
problem
at
on
the
the
same
other
time.
way when everybody calls everything terrorist. It's not a terrorist anymore. Like, you can't call every single time an Islamic person does anything, it's terrorist. Meaning Iran does this, terrorist. If you call everything terrorist doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right,
like
but
Hamas does terrorism, but they're when you had like these ISIS, like they had an army with army bases, and they're coming out. You could fight them. Right. I don't know if that's called terrorists. Like, yeah, they did terror, but that's how.
Well, it's ideologically motivated violence for a political end is terrorism,
But wouldn't that be any army?
No, because if you're intentionally targeting civilians to maximize civilian death, that's terrorism.
I think it's another form of war in some senses. I mean, I'm saying, it's all determined by Hamas can't win. All they could do.
Terrorism isn't defined by who's. Yeah, but you're associating terrorism with just being like strategically disadvantaged or weaker. It's not true.
I just have a problem.
Acts of terrorism have to do with who you're targeting, for what reason, with what intention.
I think whenever you overuse a word, it doesn't mean anything anymore. That's
that's a strange standard.
Because I don't think
you can't overuse it because it may lose its meaning. But if it's happening a lot, then you have to use it as much as possible. I would say don't misuse it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think it's misused because when I tell people about, like you say, do you support that Hamas is a terrorist state? Do you support it? Is it working?
Yeah. Do
you support it? You're a real podcaster. Yeah. You're like, I'm watching. You support his terrorist state. Everybody's rolling their eyes. They're like, yeah, you call everybody terrorist state. Like, it kind of has that feel. I have another one with...
Yeah, but don't give up on that. That's just...
Yeah?
Yeah, because call terrorism where it's terrorism. Don't say, I'm not going to use it anymore because we're using it too much.
No, I want to be careful about where I use it.
The opposite is true. If it's happening too much, call it out every time until it stops. Don't give up on calling things out.
But you know they call the Israeli army terrorists.
Yes, but they're not, and you have to define why. Right. Because the IDF does not intentionally target civilians. We do not drag Arab and Muslim Palestinians through the streets to mobs of cheering crowds and hand out candies. We don't do that.
Right.
And therefore, that's not terrorism.
Can I tell you another word I don't like?
If you go into people's homes and target babies and shoot them in their cribs, or drag people through the street, putting your bloody hands up and give out candies and name streets after these people, you're supporting terrorism. There's a definitive categorical difference.
Right.
No matter how much proportionally is happening on one side or another, it's like, I don't want to say that anymore because it's getting overused. Well, then the problem isn't it's getting overused. The problem is it's happening too much. If it's in fact
terrorism. But I'm telling you, I feel...
You may have to communicate it in an effective way. I hear that strategically. But don't give up on definitions. That's how we end up in a mess.
No, I got it. But I'm saying every time we attack, and we attacked Afghanistan, it was like they're terrorists. They did some terrible things, and terror was part of it.
Yeah.
But and we attacked Iraq as terrorists. Like every time you have I'm sure you have a good Bush impression. He would say terror without one syllable. You know what I'm talking about? Terror. The original Bush.
Well, declaring a war on terrorism generally is kind of, you could say, is a silly idea.
It's similar to the war on drugs, which is an idea.
Yes, like a war on things.
Like, you're not
on abstractions is not strategically good. But I'm talking about if we're identifying certain behavior and morally judging it, you have to be precise every time, and the scale and degree to which it's happening is kind of irrelevant. If it's happening a lot, you got to call it what it is.
Yeah. There's another word I have
It's like if there's a murder problem happening in a country, it's like, well, let's not call it murder anymore because everyone's going to it's going to lose its meaning. It's like, well, no, are people getting murdered?
Right.
Well, it's too much rape. If we use the word rape too many times, it's going to lose its meaning. Well, what's the problem? Is too much rape happening? That's probably the bigger issue than you calling it out too many times.
Right.
That's all I'll say about that. But I understand what you're saying about if you're trying to communicate the problem of something, and it's not getting through, you can try various ways of doing it. But I think it just needs more precise definitions.
I think these things are so important because I've seen how words have been used through history, and like they could F with you. But one of the things that really bothers me is and I say it really bothers me, but it gives me a lot of thought, is the word Zionism. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm kind of bothered that we still have that word.
Right. I've been hearing that too.
Yeah, I mean, like,
why are you bothered?
I'm bothered because it's like, when we started Zionism, we we were discussing whether we need a Jewish state, and the Jews have a people to go to, and that was what Zionism was. And now we have a Jewish state. And now we're like discussing aborting our 5-year-old baby. You know what I'm saying? It's like you could discuss we're going to abort the baby or not, or have children or not.
Or cut the baby in half.
Right. But the baby's...
Give some of the baby up.
Right, exactly. The baby's already here.
Saying it's realized.
So why don't we call it nationalism? Like, I'm just supporting, like, if someone's fighting against Puerto Rico, they're like, well, should Puerto Ricans have their own country? You're like, why is that still being discussed?
It's a fair argument to say that we're still trying to make the case that Israel should exist.
Just by saying the word.
By saying I'm a Zionist. I support.
Like, I'm a Zionist. There's no word for, like, whether Jordan should exist.
Right.
And I can make the same arguments whether Jordan should exist.
Yeah.
But, like, no one's saying it. This is like a belief system. To me, this is something that really bothers me, is I think we have a collective low self-esteem. We're always on the defense. We're always on our back heels.
That's all true. I hear you. I think that's still a marginal issue. It's the effect and not the cause. The reason we keep saying we're Zionists is because people want to destroy Israel. Us saying Zionist is not what's causing people to want to destroy
But
Israel.
I feel like they get to say, well, we don't agree with the idea that Jews should have their own place. This is not up for discussion.
They believe that to begin with. I hear you by saying, no, we do.
I don't want to discuss it.
Yeah.
At all.
It's a fait accompli. It exists.
There is almost nobody alive today, I mean, statistically, that wasn't alive when Israel was around. I mean, I'm saying it's a very small group of people that were around then.
Right.
Israel's here. So, I don't know, it's like these words things definitely drive me a little crazy.
I understand that. You're the second person recently that's been talking about that. Like, we accomplished Zionism, and so therefore,
I heard someone speaking
in dwelling about it. I hear you. I think at the end of the day, the fact that it exists is the problem fundamentally. It's not that it was land that was taken. It's not some injustice of sorts, other than the fact that a Jewish state exists in Israel and that Israel exists at all. The problem isn't that a Palestinian state doesn't exist. It's that Israel does. And we're on the defensive because we keep getting attacked. But you're saying, in the argument's sake, you know, one of the cases for Israel is that Jewish people historically are one of the most, if not the most, oppressed group on the planet, and that there is a necessity to have a Jewish state in the ancestral homeland to serve as a safe haven for Jews. It also protects the minorities within it. It's a Western democracy. But, you know, is it blaming the victim to say, stop using Zionist? Right. Are we blaming the victim? I think there's a validity. It's an interesting point to make, that in doing so, you're already capitulating a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
yes, we need to be more on the offense. We need to assert and be strong. I hear all that. The fact that we still use the term Zionism or not, I don't know if that's the fundamental issue. It's a marginal issue. Which is
I think it's marginal, but for some reason, I think it represents how we feel. Like, we need to defend ourselves. What are you talking about? You attack me, I kill you. I don't mean to say it in a nasty way, but if someone comes to my house and tries to kill my kids, I figured out who they are.
Are you a Sonnyist?
I'm like, right.
Are you a Sonnyist?
I believe that I deserve to exist in my home. What are you talking about?
Listen,
I do exist.
I agree in terms of the fact that I think Israel doesn't act strong enough to assert that it has every right. It says it in name only. We have the right to defend ourselves, but they're not really willing to do it.
Yeah.
In the end of the day, Israel has a very high tolerance for its own casualties, for its own suffering. It puts its soldiers and its civilians at risk all the time, and it's willing to do that to appease the world or to appease some weird defected morality that it's responsible for the civilians of its enemy combatants more than its own. And I don't really buy into that. You don't have to. I don't think gratuitous violence is not acceptable, and Israel should always act from a place of self-defense. But what that means is not compromising your security as a country and the security of your soldiers and citizens for the sake of the regimes that are putting their own civilians at risk. That's on them. If you aggress against Israel, you bring on the necessary response of self-defense, and you are responsible for that if you're the aggressor, which Hamas is. So the second Israel tries to do both, I think it's self-defeating. Look, no, we are doing this. We are dropping we are doing all these kind of things. They lose.
Right.
They don't gain any points with the world for doing that, because not only it's lose-lose, they're putting their civilians and soldiers in more harm's way as soldiers wait in a building that's booby-trapped waiting to die because the rules of engagement are so strict that they can't properly defend themselves. And at the end of the day, while Israel does value life generally and human life and tries to minimize civilian casualties, I understand that. To try to, when a hospital was bombed, and it was ended up being an Islamic Jihad rocket that fell on it, the pro-Israel advocates tried to say, see, it wasn't Israel. It wasn't Israel. Now, I get you have to point to the truth. Right. Make the case that there's so much, there is so much deception going on and just always trying to blame Israel as the default. But at the end of the day, Israel has bombed hospitals, many hospitals. And it's a better position today. If they did, it's justified because of what Hamas has been doing with these hospitals. Right. And Al-Shifa, you found, tunnels underneath and weapon stockpiles and caches, weapons caches. And if we're going to say on one hand that Israel's justified in attacking those spots because they become military targets because of what Hamas has done, then you can't selectively say, see, Israel's better because that wasn't Israel's rocket that bombed it.
Right.
Self-defeating in that way.
Yeah.
You can't give both. You lose the argument that way. So, don't die on that hill, because if it was, and we're supporting Israel's right to defend itself in this urban warfare where it's completely asymmetrical, and Hamas is using these as military targets, then we can't say on the one hand they're totally justified in doing it. You can defend the truth of the story and point out the hypocrisy and blaming Israel as a default, for sure. Blame the press for that. I get that.
But we have to stand up more proud, I think.
But I said, but don't say that, oh, it wasn't the hospital. See, I told you, Israel would never do that. I mean, they have done that, and it's justified. Right. Because of what Hamas has turned these places into. UNRWA facilities, churches, have made civilian targets become military targets in the way they've operated.
It's crazy, because I'm looking at this stuff, and I'm like, how is everybody else not seeing this? Yeah. But I do follow a bunch of Palestinian Instagram accounts. Yeah. I follow it on my personal one, so I don't get in trouble with my podcast. Okay. They're very convincing, I will tell you. And they have a lot more followers. It's pretty wild.
How so? Give me some of that.
No, I'd say I'm following this one, I don't remember her name, and I don't want to promote it, actually. Mm-hmm. So,
no, I'm saying, what have you seen that
she stands in front of a crater, talks about the people that are getting killed. These are like, and she's like, this is, my friends are dying, and this is dying, and this is what they're doing. They're not letting us go here. And I'm listening to it.
She should be outraged at Hamas. She should be, because that didn't exist.
They will.
They never will.
Not only they never will, I have never heard any one of these Instagram accounts, and actually I've been looking, ever mention Hamas in any single thing. They don't ever mention Hamas.
Did the crater exist on October 4th, 5th, and 6th? No, it didn't. Right.
But they don't mention Hamas. I'm trying to figure out, I'm not
denying the tragedy of the situation. Like, war is not desirable. Right. Self-defense is desirable. But war and the optics of war, no human being who's a feeling person can deny how terrible it is. Yeah. So it should be ruthless, quick, swift, and successful, and be over. So that you get to peace.
I think this is...
the only way to peace is defeat those who do not want peace.
This is really fascinating.
That's what Bill Maher said on The View. There's one solution to this. Stop attacking Israel. He said it on The View. Yeah, stop attacking Israel. It'll stop.
You don't do a Bill Maher impression?
I don't.
I feel like everybody does a Bill Maher.
You know what? Okay. I don't really have a good Bill Maher.
You got to get a Bill Maher, because he's so fun.
He's one of those I can't.
You ever see him defending, like, nobody sounds like him? He doesn't like when people do imitations of him?
He does hate that.
Oh, I love it.
He likes certain people now. There's certain people he doesn't.
He's starting
I don't.
Okay? There's nothing like me.
So, yes. Well, yeah.
So I want to talk Candace Owens, because that was like, for you, I mean, I thought it was like an explosion. Like, you went, I mean, she's massive. Yeah. She's massive. And I feel like it's interesting, because I'm not very right-wing. I'm not. I'm probably in the middle now, because I thought I was on the left, but I'm probably in the middle. And I'm not very political. But Candace Owens says things about war that I'm usually on board with. And when she saw this whole thing happen, she just saw it as another war, I think. And then she brought you on. I was really curious. I didn't really follow it afterwards. I watched the whole thing with you, and I thought it was awesome. And I felt like there was, so I wanted to ask you, like, what was your experience, like, going on to that and having to talk to someone who, I didn't think you saw her as an anti-Semite or someone who, maybe I'm wrong, but it was like talking almost to the right-wing masses. That's what it felt like to me, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, not the right-wing
Maybe not
masses.
right-wing, but like anti-war masses.
The things she was saying were sort of going against the typical, what you'd expect from conservative media.
Yeah, the truth is it was.
So that was what was kind of surprising about it. To be surrounded by people who I think have very convincing arguments for Israel. Even Charlie Kirk, who's a very close friend of hers. You have Ben Shapiro, before they had a public rift about it, and Dennis Prager. The people she came up through, I would think would be first to have conversations with about it before me, but I guess it didn't happen, you know? So that was surprising in one sense.
Right, okay.
And, you know, I mean, I can't psychologically, before speaking to her one-on-one, I was trying to figure out what was going through her head and maybe thinking it was like feeling a certain pressure to think a certain way, and instinctually she reacts to that, whether it's BLM saying, you must support BLM, hate all white people, and she's like, no. I'm not going to cave to that pressure, and you're not going to use my black identity against me to do that. So she was sensitive. I'm just being psychoanalytical now a little bit. Before talking to her one-on-one, I was thinking, you know, it's possible that she's connecting all the wrong dots here. And in just the way that BLM was trying to invalidate and delegitimize her black identity because she wasn't towing the party line and supporting these mass left-wing movements, in the same way Jews are using the Israel issue and anti-Semitism to say, you're not really Jewish if you don't support Israel and you don't support this campaign of
you're not really right-wing also.
Whatever it is,
right.
Not just that, but like she was sort of connecting this dot as if Jews were saying, we're dismissing people's Jewish identities, and that's not what was going on. So that needed some clarification. But I think maybe being in a conservative environment where everybody thinks it's pretty much aligned on Israel made her kind of question it. And I think a lot of her confusion on Israel wasn't coming from a hateful place, but coming from an ignorant place of not really feeling connected. She admittedly said, I don't know this issue. It's not something I know that much about or I'm that close to. So there's been movement on the right-wing conservative side of sort of an isolationism, post-Iraq, post all these entanglements that have been poor decisions on America's part to just stay out of these world affairs. Right. So feeling this alliance between the U.S. and Israel was kind of getting conflated and muddled into that. Like, Ukraine, don't support Ukraine, don't get involved in Israel either. This is another thing. We don't want to be pressured into war. But to not know where you stand morally on the issue, forget what you think about what the foreign policy should be, the aid packages, all those kind of things that are academic discussions. Right. To not be able to tell who the good guys and bad guys are here was kind of astounding. And to say that in calling out the anti-Semitism we were seeing across campuses, you know, that Jews are the ones weaponizing anti-Semitism to silence people as opposed to the actual anti-Semitism that's being weaponized against us. So that's where I took issue. So when she tweeted something about that, she shared like the Queen of Jordan, you know, had a nasty tweet or, you know, a pretty provocative tweet about how Jews are weaponizing anti-Semitism to silence people, and she agreed with that. It got to this point where I was watching these tweets, and it was... And now she had known about me as a comedian a year earlier or so, being a fan of certain impressions, Prince Harry stuff that I had put out there. She liked the unconscious bias impressions, Prince Harry. And she did some favorable reviews to me.
I can't stop laughing. Can I just mention one middle thing?
Yeah, sure.
So when I watch your podcast, you pop out so much jokes, and sometimes your guests don't get them, the jokes.
But you're watching.
And I'm watching, and I'm like, how you missed that one? And then you missed that one. And I actually, having you on, I was like, I hope I don't miss any of those jokes. I'm going to feel like such a fool.
So, no, sometimes, but yeah.
I love how you use humor to deal with this. But,
I think she had been a fan of that stuff, which was cool, and she reviewed some of my stuff, and that was nice. So I think when I responded firmly to this tweet, like, no, and I called her out on Twitter, it's supposed to be looking at me as some like random troll. She was like, oh, wow, like I'm kind of a fan of this guy's comedy. This one kind of like stuck with me, and to her credit, she invited me on like that day to talk about it. And that's why I ended up on the show. That's sort of the backstory. Yeah. And also to her credit, I'm just going to credit where it's due. She left a 50-minute, an hour conversation up. We had a civil conversation, unedited, and she put the whole thing out there. And what was revealed to me in talking to her was that, you know, I came at it just curious, wanting to understand her point of view. And she was open to hearing mine too. But I did get a sense at first that maybe she thought I was coming at things from like more of a left-wing cancel culture perspective, which I am not. Right. And so a lot of my counter-arguments to her were from a much more conservative perspective, like, what about these Jews protesting against Israel? I'm like, well, look, remember all the white people during the BLM riots who were saying, I hate myself, we're guilty. And at the same time, this pacifism that permeates everyone on the left, Jewish or non-Jewish, it's still wrong to say Israel can't defend itself, whether you're Jewish or not Jewish. I'm not dismissing their Jewish identity for doing so, even though I also happen to personally think that a lot of these people, you know, in the encampments who are saying, you know, who are Jews standing up against us, not in our name, my hunch is that their Judaism is pretty marginal to them, other than when they're speaking out against Israel, when they're using their Jewish identity to criticize Israel. That's a guess for me being connected to the community, but it seems like people are putting on a tallis to go protest at the White House and
The
then
Chabad
not wearing it any other time.
Chabad's having a blast. So
But
like,
it was strange. It was
at least they
strange.
put on a towel.
So it was strange to me to make those connections. So I was trying to clarify that. And when we talk about Israel in detail, she just didn't know that much about it. And it was much more of a civil conversation than it was a debate. And the weird things was about like the suspicions that I was picking up on, like, and since our conversation, I wasn't, you know, the whole, she labeled the conversation, am I anti-Semitic? Now I'm not, you know, I came away with it actually, I thought it was a good conversation, and I'm glad it really went well and it was civil, and I think a lot of people responded to the civility of it in a good way. A lot of people want you to say, like, you know, you want you to take a win, or like you know, look at it as a competition. Who won?
It didn't feel like a debate.
Yeah, and to me, I felt like after that, the win is that we both kind of were able to listen to each other and hear each other's perspectives out, and it was civil in that way. I will say that, like, you know, it's a strange thing, and maybe we'll have a future conversation about it, but this idea of seeing Jews overrepresented in a lot of things and successful endeavors, and that being met with suspicion, or like, what's going on here? Like, what's the real story behind all this? That's a strange thing that ends up emboldening a lot of bad actors out there, even if she may not intentionally mean to do so. You know, you're not having no ill will or feelings towards individual Jewish people, but when you engage in these kind of things of suspicion, what's really going on here? This person also is Jewish. Just saying, you end up emboldening a lot of bad actors out there and providing red meat to people who do have bad intentions. And engaging with that and challenging that is not trying to destroy her or cancel her. It's doing what she wants. It's engaging with the debate and challenging her on those kinds of issues. Now, I would say that the things that she's been advocating for the black community, for her community, about cultural decisions of staying in two-parent families and working hard and education and all that kind of stuff, that's what the Jewish community has been good at doing.
Right.
Not been playing a victim mentality. Even though we'll call out hate and anti-Semitism and work hard to commemorate and never forget past trauma, we don't use it as an excuse to stay victims.
Right.
Like, who's gotten out of the victim mentality really well? The Jewish community. So why not look to it to emulate? These are the kind of things that Candace has advocated for previously for her community for years and years and years, and built a whole brand on that, which was admirable in a sense. So it was always very confusing that when she looked at the Jewish community, it seemed to be met with more of a suspicion or Jewish success or you know, the fact that Jews are overrepresented in a lot of fields, whatever it may be.
But that's a very weird
You
thing
know,
I see with people with
And I'm like, why is all
billionaires.
that, and not just Candace, why are people looking at that with suspicion? It's like there's reasons for that aren't nefarious.
So did you get the feeling that she was an anti-Semite?
In talking to her?
Yeah.
I did not get that feeling when we were talking one-on-one. When you look at the... and I'm not personally defending these statements that she's made. She's made a lot of statements that I find incredibly troubling.
Right.
And yes, that do engage in certain tropes and embolden anti-Semitism. But I don't know if she's aware that she's doing that, you know? And I think that's why I called her out the first time when she shared the Queen of Jordan's tweet.
Right.
And I would engage with her again, because I think the way to combat ignorance is not by yelling and screaming at it. It's by engaging with it. Hate is harder to combat. If somebody's just purely hateful, you know, there are people I would not engage with. In her case, I mean, there's been other tweets she's done since that I'm just like, what is going on here? What is this about? Right. But in the end of the day, I don't feel particularly comfortable telling somebody what they feel about something that they say they don't feel themselves.
Right, gotcha.
The only way you can have constructive conversations with people is if you have to take them at their word that they're coming at something in good faith, especially once you interface with somebody in real life. And when you talk to somebody in real life, you sort of get a little bit past the public persona that they are and reacting to their statements and the theater of media, of online media. You sort of think you know somebody. And when you interface one-on-one, it's a bit different. There's something else that changes in how you perceive them. But don't get me wrong. I'm not condoning the tweets I saw. I challenged her on those tweets too that led up to our conversation, and the tweets since. There's so many troubling things that it does this make me go, what on earth is this about? You know?
It's very interesting. You were saying this idea. I see it with like rich people also. Like, we're all dreaming of being rich. As the second you get rich, this is like a hatred to the rich.
Right.
I see that with the Jews. It's like what you're saying. It's like we all wish we had. She's fighting for the two-family home. She's fighting. We have it.
Yeah.
Now they hate us for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a very odd thing.
Yeah, and look, it's just like, I think it's stepping over the line to say what somebody feels in their heart or in their head.
Right.
That's like calling. To me, it is reminiscent of saying like, well, this person's racist whether they know it or not. They're just racist. White people are just systemic. They're part of a system, and they're racist. And it reeks of that a little bit. So one has to be careful.
That.
But you can criticize deeds and words and things and say these have consequences. What you're saying is really problematic. And here is
all
why.
this anti-Zionist.
And so, like,
I'm an anti-Zionist. I'm not anti-Jew. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not.
Yeah.
You're looking at it, and we're calling BS. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Like,
What,
everybody says they're not anti-Semitic. But I'm saying just the idea, from the river to the sea,
Yeah.
like, Jews should not be there.
Oh, I'm not
right?
soft on that.
So what I'm saying is, like, and then you ask that person, well, what do you say? And they say, I'm not anti-Semitic. It's just you took the land from the Arabs. So, like, but you're saying something anti-Semitic.
There's explicit, advertent anti-Semitism. There's inadvertent anti-Semitism where people are like, you have a lack of self-awareness, not realizing that you are singling out one country, one group of people, one thing, and holding them to a standard that you hold no one else. And that is the revealed anti-Semitism of what you're doing. Because that's the actions and that's the deeds. You're not just telling somebody you just feel a certain way, even though you can. I could demonstrate to you why. And so that's different. There's also people out there, there's Nick Fuentes is out there on the air, and he's a proud anti-Semite. There's people out there talking about the parasitic Jew, and I don't know how important it is to draw those distinctions, but for what it's worth, there are people proudly anti-Semitic, especially on the right, the far right, who are like making waves saying, I'm edgy, it's cool, it's somehow sexy now to be anti-Semite, who are saying, I guess anti-Semitism is the truth now. I see it all over Twitter. People celebrating the hostages being taken, laughing about it, laugh emojis, making fun of it, ridiculing Israeli suffering and Jewish and atrocities against Jewish people. And there's kind of different categories of that, and you could split the different. You can see the dividing lines between who's who a little bit. Right. And there are people who are just totally misinformed on Israel and thinking they're standing up for justice, but that don't realize they're actually providing coverage for terrorism, coverage for anti-Semitism. And so it gets a little hard. So it gets a little like muddled up together. And I think you have to try to be careful not to call everything one thing, like we said before, because it can water down the meaning of the thing. If Whoopi Goldberg says the wrong thing about the Holocaust was not about race. It's about man's inhumanity to man. And that was a totally wrong thing to say, like wrong, like factually wrong.
Yeah.
But to say, oh, she's an anti-Semite. She's an anti-Semite. Kick her off the View for 4 days. It's probably not, that's not productive. It's not really correct.
Also,
it's okay to not know things. The problem is also in the commentary class, you cannot know a lot of things, but have millions of people be influenced by what you're saying.
Also,
and I even said it to Candace, like, we had a nice conversation, and you're demonstrating how you don't have anti-Semitic feelings towards Jews. But if you looked at your comment sections while we were talking, some ugly stuff in there. So it's just good to be aware of the consequences of your speech and what it's emboldening.
Right.
And I made that clear. But then everyone had an alliance. I don't even want to talk about it.
Do you think there's a point? Do you think there's a point in all this, in like the fight? I'm saying that's where, literally, I'm talking to you, and I'm having that feeling. Like I said in the beginning of the conversation, I ran away. I ran away from this because of the overwhelming terror that I feel inside me. That, like, is this coming back? Are we about to deal with this? Is there a point to fight back? Like, I don't.
What do you mean by fight back? Is there a point to fighting back?
To even just
yes.
Are we changing people's minds at all? Like, are we?
Sometimes it's like you're a treadmill running in place, but if you stop, you're going to get thrown off. So,
I mean, you have to respond. Like, if this is 1939.
You have to.
You think they just were not responding? They didn't have the social media.
I just think you have to tell the truth. That's your duty. That's the obligation as a person, as a human, as a Jew. You have to tell the truth.
Well, most people haven't.
You have to keep saying it, even if everything seems like it's against it.
So why am I the only one with it? I'm not trying to say like it's a big thing, but like the flag thing, or like why are you yelling about it? You're a comedian. You're a great musician. You're like, why are you yelling about a topic? Mm-hmm. Like, why do certain people like just like why did you get fired up about that? I mean, I know why it pisses everybody off. Yeah. The reason I'm asking is that not everybody did that. Most people have.
They're not speaking.
They're not speaking of.
Well, they've been co-opted, unfortunately, by the language, which is so deep-seated into this issue that people even call it a conflict. the Middle East conflict. I'm like, it's not a conflict, as if there's two equal sides, just can't stop fighting, cycle of violence. No. There's aggressors and there's defenders. There's good and there's evil. There's bad actors and good actors. There's, you know, this is a battle. This is a civilizational, ideological battle here. And people have been co-opted by the language of softening it. Everything wants it to feel equal. Everybody's just bad. War or violence just kind of, you know, all of a sudden comes upon humanity like, you know, there's no actual agency or accountability here on the part of Hamas or terrorists who will do these things. Well, and so people get confused in that cloud, so you have to cut through that and remind people, no. It's not a conflict. Don't say, oh, well, the IDF also murders. Well, murder has a certain... Kills, yes, but murder is a very different thing than kill. Self-defense is a very different thing than a murder is different than retaliation. Even though people die in both scenarios, the morality and the moral judgment are completely different things. And so don't get swept up in that. Too many people are, and they're just like, they get exhausted by it because they've been confused at a basic level on how to even speak about the subject with such moral confusion.
Wow. You had Renan Hirschberg on. Mm-hmm. Who that guy makes me laugh till I cry. He's so funny. And
the thing about Joe Rogan, I would never go on his podcast unless he asked me. Love it.
That was one of his greatest bits. He's like,
unless him or anyone from his staff responded to my one of many emails, that's the only time I would go on Joe. I think he's a dangerous society. I really do. But I would go on. The only time I would go on is if him or any of his staff asked me. He's a great comedian.
He's so funny. He makes me. He has this bit on turbulence on the airplanes. Like that's what's dividing us. But anyway, he says he's like that's the real thing that divides us. But he represents most, in my eyes, like most Jewish people in the world. They're like, I have my views, but like I'm not getting crazy about this. Right. And then once in a while you have some people who are getting crazy about it. You're one of those people getting crazy about it. I guess I was just trying to figure out like what exactly set your fire off as opposed to many others.
As long as everybody mostly stays silent in the face of hostages still being held and footage coming out of them being brutalized with their ankles sliced and bloodstains on their pants and victims of ongoing rape and sexual assault, and no one holds up signs that says, bring back our girls. And Hollywood, for the most part, remains silent. And the most they could do is wear ceasefire now pins to these events. And as long as everybody is so morally confused and bankrupt on this issue, and as long as there's people out there on college campuses supporting October 7th as a glorious day of resistance, it is revealed that the world that we live in is broken and backwards. And so I'll shout from the rooftops until that is repaired.
Right.
And I'll still make people laugh, too. But now it has been revealed to me that there's professors at our liberal arts colleges at the highest, most prestigious universities in the country and around the world that support this, and it's not a conspiracy. They write articles proudly about it, and they're still on campus. They're not fired. Say, you know, if you got up there and if a white supremacist group massacred a bunch of black people, and there were professors on campus that stood up proudly saying, "What a glorious day of white resistance," they'd be gone the next day.
Yeah,
they would be gone. There'd be no question about it. I mean, Scott Galloway talks about it all the time. You know, he's like, free speech is at its freest when it comes to talking about the Jews. We're in a crisis right now. We're in a total crisis right now. The problem is young men, that's my college, Scott Galloway, young men between the ages of 18 and 30 haven't had sex within the last year. We're in a crisis right now. I don't think you know who Scott Galloway is.
No, I don't. I'm like listening. I'm like, probably an amazing impression.
But anyway, the point is, as long as that's there and tolerated,
are there any? Do you think there are any other groups? Because like all this stuff we're talking about is this double standard. That's like, what the hell is going on here? Like I don't.
People don't like successful minorities generally. I think the world resents successful minorities that aren't supposed to be successful. For one thing, a white majority, so to speak, using the white term white loosely, but a majority looks at a successful minority and says, "Hey, like we're the majority here. Right. How are they outperforming us?" And it's happened. I've read about, you know, the Chinese in Malaysia. You read about like maybe it's Lebanese in sub-Saharan Africa. I may be getting the groups wrong, but Armenians, people who work in middleman trades that do things that maybe a lot of people don't understand how they accomplish wealth, but then they ban them from the societies and the economies collapse. Like Jews in finance, that are financing, different sectors of the economy, and people don't quite understand what they do.
So you're
like
saying
successful minorities piss off the majority that feels
Right.
entitled to success, and other minorities that might not be as successful resent successful minorities because it dispels the myth that the society is systemically racist.
So you're saying
and
if
therefore
the
that's why
black
they're not
community,
succeeding.
if the black community became very successful, this might happen to them?
If they became disproportionately successful,
Yeah.
I guess so. I mean, if you look at what Jews, Asians, if we're talking about this generally, like the Jewish community, Asians, Indians, you don't see disproportionate anti-Semitism from those groups towards Jews that much.
I mean, I don't see a lot of Asian hate. I know maybe they talk. Am I missing something? Is there a lot of Asian hate in America? Like, oh my gosh,
Well,
there's too many Chinese people in my neighborhood. Like, is that happening?
There is resentment, but I think the difference is that anti-Semitism versus other forms of bigotry is multifaceted. There are different flavors of anti-Semitism that come from different places. Meaning, if you're a racist and you don't like Asian people, you don't like them because they're Asian, and it's like you don't like either the way they look or whatever it is, you're against them because they're Asian, and it just comes from maybe a bigoted, racist place. But anti-Semitism can be economically motivated, socially motivated, religiously motivated, so it comes from all these different places.
Right.
So it's rooted in, there's forms of deep-rooted Christian anti-Semitism was about what the conspiracy was Jews killed Jesus, and that's where that stemmed from. Islamic anti-Semitism, so there's the religious forms of it. There's the social, economic, cultural, more the right-wing strains of it. The Jews control the money, they control the power, they are behind everything. There's cabal secretly running us. They have control of the banks and the news and Hollywood. Then there's the left-wing anti-Semitism, which is in the form of Jews. There's the white settler colonialists, that Jews are white, and in the form of anti-Zionism, that it's like the Jewish state, the Jew among nations that we are going to be against. So there's all these different, which doesn't exist with other groups.
I know. I looked.
So that's what makes it a little bit unique.
It's a little unique. I feel like it's tremendously unique.
Mm-hmm.
But
there was a statement made that it was with actually Candace Owens. We don't have to go back to it too much, but she spoke to one rabbi who said anti-Semitism mutates with time, and she took that to mean, I guess anti-Semitism could just mean anything. You could just call anything anti-Semitic. And I think what he said was could be refined and wasn't said well. I think it's anti-Semitism is one thing. It's like the hatred or hostility or towards Jewish people.
Right.
But the reasons for it mutate,
right, depending
depending on the society that it's in.
I don't think that people could really understand anti-Semitism because it takes every single form. Like I don't. Think
it always ends up in the same place.
I don't believe there's any other group in the world that has ever been through what the Jews have been through from what I've studied. Like, it doesn't make any sense. There have been groups that have been hated, usually because they're outsiders, and there's not much more to it.
Douglas Murray was like, they hated the Jews when they were stateless. They hate them because they have states. They hated them before, they hated them after, they hated them in previous centuries, and I don't speak publicly about it, but they hate them all the time because they hate the Jews. Yeah.
By the way,
they're really
Douglas Murray
they're
is
coming for you. Yes. Yes, they were not only did they commit these acts of atrocity, they were absolutely elated when they did it.
Douglas Murray is the coolest because no matter what you say to him, he's just
Sonny, they're coming for you. Why do you not mention Egypt? Let me tell Sonny, why do you not mention Egypt? The Gaza shares a border with Egypt. Why do you not mention Egypt? Conveniently, you leave it out. Do you not know? Surely you know. Sure. The Gaza and Hamas share a border with Egypt. Why do you not mention Egypt?
It's a direct quote. I actually, if you want to know why I was like so desperate to have you on, because I think this is you ever heard of the concept, the sacred clown? Have you heard of the sacred clown? It's the coolest thing. You should know it as a comedian, but because it is actually what you are. But I'll explain.
Sacred clown,
right?
Bow to me.
There is. I don't know enough about it, but basically, certain Native American cultures They had one character, which is like a batchen in the Jewish community. Right. They had one character called a sacred clown, and at certain occasions, the only person who could mess with the chief, who was out, and his job was to basically take everybody down a couple of notches. Nice. And he was a sacred clown, and he was allowed to say whatever the heck he wanted. Like they didn't care. And to me, it was similar to the idea of like, was Marcus Aurelius used to have a guy say, "You are but mortal." I don't know.
Yeah, the jester, the court jester.
The court jester, these things. Sometimes I think, and I'm like, I'm in love with like comedy podcasts, because those are like my favorite podcasts. Like the Bad Friends, I could die laughing. I sometimes have to pull over because it's so funny. But I think that the answer to most of the world's problems is comedy. It's the only way that I could actually change my mind, I found, is comedy. Because you make fun of something that I can't see unless it comes in the form of a joke. I don't know if you've experienced this, but one of the reasons I'm like so excited about you is because you're saying all this stuff, but there are a lot of people, you know, influencers running around saying this stuff, and I'm like, right. All of Israel. You know, like, and I'm like, are you actually able to make someone think something deeper without, you like, basically a comedy skips your defense mechanisms. Like, we have all these things, like, we don't talk about sex, and comedy's like, and there we are, and you're like, oh, that's true and hilarious, and I'm dying. But I have changed my mind so many times because of comedy. I can't really think of examples, but it's like it's been shifts. And I'm curious what you think about that, because it's one of the things I love is that you're in the middle of like discussing, even with Candace Owens' conversation and almost all your podcasts, and Rudy Rockman, who's like, that guy don't have any time for comedy at all. He's like straight, like, I love that conversation.
Rudy changes minds for sure, because he's having a serious conversation. Comedy is disarming.
It's disarming.
So in a way, it allows people to listen to each other. Through the comedy can reveal certain truths and funny things. Sometimes when you're making fun of something pretty explicitly, if I'm making fun of the protesters of the encampments, I'm probably not going to change their mind when I'm ridiculing them, because it's pure satire and it's meant to more reinforce maybe people who already would agree. So one can call it what it is. You know, it's more in the Jon Stewart school, which I haven't historically been so into, where it's satire. So the people watching, it's reinforcing a certain side of the argument that already kind of agrees.
That's not the comedy. You know, I'm thinking like Shane Gillis when he stands up and he starts saying right-wing stuff to a left-wing crowd, and then says, all your dads are left-wing, are right-wing. Your dads are exactly like my dad, and you don't even want
for sure
the left-wing
So comedy
dad.
reveals us.
Like, to me,
something is only funny. People laugh involuntarily at something because it reveals a certain truth that we all know to be true, but even if we can't say it. So as long as what makes something funny and relatable is that it is true in some way. Not maybe literally you're exaggerating something, but you're exposing something that everybody feels but doesn't necessarily feel comfortable saying. And in the form of comedy, in the form of a good joke, you're revealing something that isn't so, that feels naughty or edgy or whatever, but we can all laugh about it, because when you laugh about something together, you're effectively approving of it and tolerating it. You know, if you make fun of a stereotype about something, that's like a form of acceptance.
Right.
When two friends are kibitzing and making fun of each other, you might be saying things that are like kind of mean and, you know, poking fun, but you're also saying, I love all of that about you.
Right.
You know? And so a lot of times when people try to shut down comedy, say, you can't point out differences among people, among groups, or stereotypes, it's like, then we're not acknowledging reality and learning to accept it and live together if you don't do that.
Right.
When you laugh about something, you're saying, we're okay with it. In a society that's not tolerant, that's not accepting, those things actually are not funny. To point out the differences in people, if you actually have a problem with people,
right.
If you're actually racist, it's not funny to make fun of minorities that you hate. That's not funny, because you mean it, and you mean it with malice, and you have nefarious intentions. But if you don't, it's coming from a good place, then to point out our differences is a celebration of them.
This is why I think Dave Chappelle is not funny anymore. Just throwing it out there.
Well, Dave Chappelle's he's a brilliant
it's
comedian.
All serious stuff.
But when he goes from comedy and jokes to non-jokes and to making points, it becomes blurry. Like, did you just make a joke, or are you making a point?
Right.
And I had an issue in that monologue on SNL too, because the Jew jokes he opened with were great. I don't want to play tomorrow. It's Shana Na tomorrow. Like, he talked about his Jewish friends and understanding the Jewish experience through his eyes. It was really funny. Holocaust jokes can be funny. You can make anything funny.
Yeah.
No topic to me is off limits if you're trying to find the funny in it. But then at some point he started to make these serious points, which were kind of providing coverage, I thought, for Kanye's behavior or explaining it.
Right.
Without a punchline, without a joke in there, it got eerie and weird.
It got weird.
You know, he was saying like, Now, Jewish people have been through terrible things. There's no question about it. Terrible things. But you just can't blame that on black people. You just can't. Pause. Nobody reacts. Why? Because that's not what's happening.
Right.
Jewish people are not blaming black people for their problems. Kanye is blaming Jewish people for his problems.
Right.
That's the main crux of the issue here. That's what's happening. It seems like a lot of people in the black community or in Kanye's fandom are agreeing with Kanye.
Right.
That's what's disturbing to the Jews, that it's him who's blaming the Jews, all the Jews, Jewish people, for his problems. And it seemed like Dave Chappelle was trying to be sympathetic to that in those moments, and then provide validity and legitimize that position, whoever they are, when he ends like that.
Right.
Like, that's where we're going to end here? Strange where this ended up.
Right.
You know, how do you feel? Do you feel better about, do you feel more empathy for the Jews right now in this point? Like, what were you trying to accomplish here? Or, yeah, Kanye has a point. Like, there was a weird,
no, but I think it was that all of a sudden
uncertain
it
point
became
there.
like, it became his real ideas. Like, all of a sudden it's not funny. Like, you're not, when you were saying.
It's just like if you're making jokes, you're making jokes. What's the intention, you know? Sometimes
Right.
a joke doesn't work, but I felt like it started with jokes and ended up in a weird
I really
place.
wasn't even talking about his monologue. I think he used to be one of my favorite comedians
Yeah.
early on,
Yeah,
and
he's-
just stopped being funny because he became a TED Talk guy. Like, I just think he just starts
yeah.
saying his ideas, but they're not funny. What I think is
All
that
right.
comedy
That
could
can be
these-
subjective.
Yeah,
but-
no, it is
yeah.
subjective.
Yeah.
I'm not saying no one's allowed to like Dave Chappelle.
No, but the thing is, like, in the trans stuff that he got in trouble with, people weren't objecting to the jokes. They were objecting to the fact that he was joking about trans people.
But those were funny,
I'm not objecting
those
to
were
the
funny jokes.
Yeah, I'm not objecting to the fact that he makes jokes about Jews. I'm okay with that. I
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
I like jokes about Jews, Asians, trans, gay, straight, black, white, jokes about everybody. It's great.
Right.
It's
As long as it's
as
funny.
long as you're making jokes. I mean,
long
you
as
take
it's
a
funny. Stuff's
if
getting
it's funny,
funny,
then
I
it
don't want
works. If it doesn't funny, but you try to make a joke, it's also kind of admirable.
Okay, yeah.
My point is, if you're not making jokes, then what are we talking about here?
Right.
So, like, the backlash he got from the trans community was not the joke, that it was an offensive joke. It was the fact that he joked at all. You're saying you can't joke about these people because you're punching down, all that kind of nonsense.
Right.
So we are a protected community from any humor. No, that I don't accept. So it didn't feel like a double standard for me to be critical of the monologue against Jews. Of course, I'm biased as a Jew, but to me, it was more like you're making a serious point here
Right.
and not a joke.
Yeah, so that is a problem. I think if a guy used to be a comedian, but I find the bridge. I don't know too many comedians, but I listen to all of them, and I find very little racism in that community. And I think it's one of the things that someone once said is you know, you do it a lot. Your imitations of people. I forgot the word. Why did I forget the word? Impressions of people. That you kind of, in order to do a proper impression, you have to kind of love that person a little bit, even if it's like you got to like kind of get in. Maybe they were talking about actually acting that person, you know, because and it's not funny if you're just making fun of the person. Like, it's funny if you're like, oh, I kind of love what this guy does a little bit. And I find that all this, like, if you're able to make, you're saying it before, you're able to make a joke about something, it's a form of acceptance of that thing, saying, I hear you, let me tell you another point.
Right.
And you could then add other points if the connection's made. I feel like there's a type of therapy called somatic therapy, which is like, it kind of goes around your brain and straight into your body. So
Yeah.
it's like that's what I feel about. I think that's.
I would say that at one point in time that's kind of true, but it depends. I mean, I can imitate people I have great admiration for.
Yeah.
I really understand them. And I can ridicule people I absolutely despise and still do. Impression is a technical skill also.
Right. But what's your
So,
best
you know, if it's like
impressions?
Jordan Peterson, you know, I've been massively a big fan of that, you know? So in order to be well-versed in the way that he speaks, you know, you have to follow it closely, you know? So, But you know, if I'm looking at Ilhan Omar talking a bunch of nonsense, I could still do her. And that,
But is your Ilhan Omar as good as
maybe
it
not?
could
I don't.
be?
You know, the 9/11. Some people did something to someone, and that is what happened. You know, so
pretty good.
Bernie Sanders. I'm no fan of Bernie Sanders, but also I think that we should not only distribute this podcast to the top 1%, but to the 99% of middle class and working people of this country. You know. And it depends, you know. So it's also a technical skill, and it doesn't have to mean more than that if you can pick up on it.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of. That's
I don't
kind
know,
of the, well,
For some reason, I think
what you're
comedy
saying,
is the answer.
But what you're saying is some people think any impression means you must not like them. That's a weird that's a misread of an impression. Yeah. Some people think it's all ridicule.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I love Jordan Peterson, but I also love this impression, have to admit. Why do you make fun of Peterson? Like, no, don't interpret an impression in and of itself as a disapproval of the person or a ridicule. Sometimes it is.
I find very often that I could tell from and it's not like I have any reason to. I don't know what's happening in my brain, but I could tell if that person has some admiration for that person when they're doing the impression.
Right.
Like I've seen, especially on SNL, like you see certain. I wish I had examples. For some reason, they're going out of my head, but like,
well, sometimes it's bad comedy if they don't like the person, and the only point of their impression is to just make fun of them without a joke. I don't like that because it's not good comedy.
Right.
There was a bit on SNL. They're like, I'm Joe Rogan. I'm eating ivermectin. I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because there's no joke there. It's just low-hanging, stupid, whatever. Horse medication. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's hacky, pandery, bad jokes. But
I just ask this because I keep asking my kids this. What is the reason that SNL is still on the air? Could you explain?
It's a fixture of culture.
But yeah, we have discussions about it as a kid.
Sometimes their shorts are good. They have some talent. But as long as they try to do that, where they're just like, the best comedy is edgy and against the grain and not going with the conformity. And it feels very conformist, pandery to a smaller woke and woke crowd. They're starting to turn. They had Shane Gillis come back to host, recognize that people are not there where they're at.
Right.
To me, like the Andy Samberg era of those shorts and stuff were maybe the last time I was tuned into it, and it was hilarious.
Right.
Because it shouldn't serve a purpose other than to be funny. And there's satire too, sure, and like making fun of politicians, but like the funny has to win. I don't care what side you're making fun of. Funny is the standard, not let's like try to stump for Joe Biden.
Yeah, so that's
or whatever it is. I don't know how overtly political they get, but for me, all I care about is funny. If it's well written and good, like their anti-Semitism sketch was just terrible. The one with the college professors.
Oh,
it was so bad, and they missed the mark on what is funny about that. They were trying to make it as if
you could have made that.
The
funny.
Questioner and interrogator is the one to mock. Like, no, that's not what was ridiculous about that.
Right.
And so they
missed the funny.
But I don't know. Like I don't know much about the insider scoop of SNL and how it works, and I know it's a notoriously competitive, difficult environment. But again, like comedy should push you a little bit and say things and do things that you wouldn't necessarily, that you feel but can't say, and it's a little bit naughty in that way. That's some of the best comedy. And what SNL is kind of doing is reinforcing things you actually don't feel but have to say.
It's weird because
that's the backwards woke. What wokeness can do to comedy is say, here's what we're allowed to say on stage, or like, here's the guidelines that you can't go past, even though I feel something inside, which is antithetical to comedy. Comedy's trying to say what you feel inside and make funny out of it.
Right.
There's no real rules about it, but I think that's some of the best jokes. It's just like the surprise thing, the whole, catching you off guard. Oh my God, did he really say that? And it's hilarious. Not to get too technical about it, but when it's the opposite, when you're trying to stay in a certain limitation.
But I'm overblowing comedy and how it's power, but I feel like I'm not.
It's certainly powerful, yeah, no.
I really think, and when I'm dealing with people like, let's say, an addict who does not want to get better and doesn't want to, and a well-placed joke in a conversation, you could completely win them over.
No, you're not underplaying it. I mean, you're not overplaying it. It is.
No, when everybody's sitting there and you have all these heads with the jowls and blah, 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 and you're like, I'm not getting convinced at all. But if Shane Gillis gets up and says, let's take a look at the right side for 1 second and recognize that there's good on that side too, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of people who don't want to stone him,
right?
Which is to me incredible.
Because I think what transcends political division is likability. If you like each other, then like you can disagree on certain things and not think bad or ill of the other person. In other words, there used to be a time when it's like, look, he's crazy, he thinks I'm crazy, but we're friends,
right?
And that sentiment has kind of been lost. Even a guy like Tom Morello, I'm a huge fan of Rage Against the Machine. He's the guitarist for Rage Against the Machine.
Right.
Who is friends with, he was asked once, and I've been hating the stuff that he's been in solidarity with on the Free Palestine stuff, which makes sense. He's also anti-American and all that kind of thing. Rage has always been about that, so it doesn't surprise me. But
it is in their name.
What's that?
It's in their name.
Yeah, exactly. But who is, I always forget his name, always, but who's the guy? Talks like this. He was on Joe Rogan. He's a big hunter and a musician. Let me tell you something. When you're a vegan, they kill every animal, every insect to try to make tofu.
I'm going to know who it is, but I don't know who it is.
His name is, he's a guitarist, Southerner with the hat. I always forget his name, always.
I don't know if I watched this.
He's been on Rogan, and he's like a hunter and musician, and it's driving me crazy that I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Not Seeger. It's like one of those like rock musician guys.
I'm not going to know.
Yeah, hard right conservative, but they're like friends, him and Tom Morello.
And then what do they say?
It'll come to me, and someone says, "Why are you friends with what's his name?" He's like, "Because we like guitars and we like music and we bond over stuff we like, and we're friends. We're just friends, you know."
That's how it always used to be.
And it used to be much more like that. And I think, like, I don't know, even Macklemore, who is just, that song is so despicable and all of that. Like, I just wonder if he hung out with the right people and had good relationships with people who were pro-Israel. At the end of the day, he'd be like, yeah, maybe there's something to that. Like, maybe that's what comedy can do, is, and music and art and things like that, is to say, like, you know, I don't know, like,
we have some differences, but we have a lot in common, and we could be friends and have a discussion about it.
But then I go back to, like, post-October 7th, it's kind of hard to see past that. If you stand in solidarity with, you know, Hamas, it's hard for me to see past anything else if you're that morally bankrupt. But at the end of the day, like, hopefully, when things cool down and whatever, there can come to a time where we can be like, yeah, he's crazy, he believes all this stuff. But
you think it's going back there? I feel like the
I don't think
internet
it's
has
going back
split
there.
us.
No, I don't think it's going back there. Especially because it's like we can disagree on like government policy, and we can disagree on like how the system should look. But if you don't accept like Jewish people's right to exist in a homeland, or Jewish people's sovereignty, or if you don't call out, you know, Jewish atrocity, but you're just exclusively talking about the response to Jewish atrocity, I have a problem with that. Like, there's no way I can support that. You know, it's hard to have a relationship if you're that person. You know?
You know what? I think I agree.
But that goes against, in a way, what I said, but that's beyond political at that point. You know, like, crazy can go only so far. You know, if you're a pedophile, I'm not gonna be friends with you.
Right.
If you're a criminal, if you're like, I don't know, like, there's differences. Like,
right.
Someone's like, yeah, I used to steal stuff. I was a thief. Oh, wow. I was a serial killer. Okay. Like,
right. If you're a thief, I want to hear the story.
You know, there are certain thresholds for sure. So.
Right.
You like bank robbers. We like bank robber movies, and we can look at Ocean's 11 as good guys.
Right.
But if they were a bunch of mass murders and serial killers, we wouldn't.
Right. I can't get cop movies. I just don't know why anybody wants to watch cops. They're the worst. Anyway, okay.
Some of the best.
No, I'm not defunding the cops.
No, they're not I'm saying some of the best movies were cop movies for some reason. I actually saw an interesting speech about how the culture has shifted so much, as reflected in movies, that growing up in the 90s or whatever, oftentimes you were looking at the hero cops trying to catch the bad guys and save the day.
Right.
And what we've seen in the past recent decades are a shift to the police being evil, the police being the bad guys, from Training Day to
corruption.
The corruption. The police are violent. The police are evil, which has led to how sentiments and people feel about police, which is interesting.
Yeah,
it sort of feeds the other.
Well, I have a theory that
it's anti-law and order. It's anti the system. You know, all that kind of stuff.
I have a theory that the police should never pull over a car, because it's the only time a law-abiding citizen will come to have a conversation with a cop.
Right.
And you have, like, basically
what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, I'd say you make a whole new service that does, you know, the speeding tickets. Don't mix it with the police, because, like, I have no reason to dislike police. I don't break the law ever. Yeah. Like, they don't bother me at all. But every time they pull me over, I'm like, this is going to cost me $2,000. You're ruining my day completely, and I wish it was somebody else. And so most of the people, what would it would be like, you know, the criminals would be like, aren't the police the worst? And everybody else would be like, I don't understand. What do they do exactly?
All right, you solved it.
There you go. I solved it. I wanted to put that out there. Yeah. It's important to put it out there.
Good.
But you definitely don't agree with me on the impressions thing. That's interesting. I really wanted to know about that.
What's that? What don't
No,
I agree?
that-
That it's always from a place of love and admiration?
Not love, that you have to, like, in order to, like, properly do it, you have to, like, dive into, like, what that person is actually, like, saying to do the best impressions.
You probably get
Like-
the best impression from truly understanding the person. That's true.
That's what
How
I was
you
saying.
feel about the person.
No,
And
you
it's
get-
easier to understand a person when you really respect and admire them, because I've watched a lot more Jordan Peterson than I have Ilhan Omar speeches. That's for sure.
Right.
But there's an element of impressions that like is just a technical ability, you know?
Did you always have this impression technical ability? I'm so jealous of
Yes.
it. I want to do it so bad. I'm terrible.
The truth is yes. Yeah, I don't know how.
Like, even as a kid, like,
Yeah.
you just, yeah, it's absolutely wild.
It's not, in my experience, something as teachable as music or other skills that one can learn. People
Right.
try to break down impressions, but it's
I found that
more like
everybody
a-
I know knew it the whole time. Like, they were good
it's
at
like
it in
perfect
fourth
pitch
grade.
or something. Somebody just is born hearing an F sharp and they know it's an F sharp, something like that, or left or right handedness. Like, I can instruct you how to use this hand, but I can't, for whatever reason. I can throw with this hand, or I can throw with this hand, or for whatever reason this one's dominant. And for whatever reason, when I see something like that, I can recreate it. Not in every scenario, but like,
Right.
what's going on internally is not like something I like studied and learned from someone else who taught me.
I wonder if they do that, because they have, like, comedy classes.
Well,
Does that work?
comedy writing. No, the craft of writing comedy is different than an impression.
Right.
Impression is a technical skill. Like,
No, impressions, I never met someone who's good at impressions who wasn't always good at impressions.
right, exactly.
Never met that person. But I've met people that are comedians that, like, learned
Yeah, comedy writing is a craft. Joke writing is a craft to be
Right.
improved upon and learned. And having good funny instincts is a part of that. But you can get better at that. That can be learned and improved upon for sure. There's a whole formulated craft of joke writing. You know, it's less of a schooled thing than music or other
Right.
arts. Comedic arts are kind of like learned on the street a little bit from doing it. There are differences in doing stand-up where you have to really rehearse in front of people. There aren't really undergrad programs for comedy or grad schools for comedy in the way there are in other arts.
Right.
But that doesn't mean there's not a structure and a formula for writing and good writing and what makes a joke better and worse and all that. Like, there's a lot of that goes into it. Impressions are just kind of the sauce. It's a certain skill set you have, just like if you can sing. I would say it's like singing.
Comedy's like singing? You can
Can
teach
anyone
singing.
learn to sing? Some people say that yes. I don't know if I believe that.
Really?
And people can improve their singing, but if the guy who's going to be the chazan at the shul was not someone born tone deaf,
Oh, wow.
right?
Well, I don't want to say this because my son is going to kill me, but my son, when he was a kid, he was kind of really tone deaf.
Right.
And then he got a guitar,
Yeah.
and he just practiced, and, like, I totally forgot about tone deaf. He plays and sings so incredibly now.
Is his
that
voice
I don't-
amazing? Like, he can really sing?
It's really good.
Yeah, I could
but
stand
maybe it's
corrected.
just an exception. I don't know. It's like,
I stand correct, but like, you know, somebody born with like sort of a natural melodic or tone of their voice that is sort of something they're born with that they don't learn.
right.
Say tone or something like that. It's possible your son figured it out, or maybe he was just not connecting the dots properly for singing. I would say singing is more universal than impressions because more
Right.
people can sing, generally speaking. But there are certain people born with I think Kelly Clarkson probably always could sing. A little
Probably,
bit.
right. Well, those
I
you're
think
talking
Justin.
about
I think Justin Timberlake was
superstars,
born,
man.
and he started as a young kid singing, and his parents went, "Wow."
Wow. His
I
YouTube.
could be wrong, and there are probably vocal instructors out there who said, "No, anybody can do it." But could anybody become a great singer in the same way someone's like people start in different spots?
Right. I got you.
And impressions are similar in that way. You know, like you can improve somebody's ability to kind of hear those nuances. Maybe impressions are even more extreme. That it's like either you sort of can have that in your DNA or you don't.
Right.
I haven't.
Okay, you're the first comedian I've had on, so I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
This is such a random question. What do you think about Norm Macdonald?
Oh yeah.
Literally, he's the only celebrity that I cried when he died, ever. I thought he was the giant. I'm curious what you
Yeah,
think.
the Gadol Hador of comedy.
He feels like the Gadol.
I came to him later. I used to not quite get it when I was like younger. Like, who's this guy? What's he doing? You know. But Norm is a cut above the rest. A comedian's comedian. In
That's what it sounds. Yeah, I can't
yeah,
stop.
total genius, brilliant, original. Yeah, take on things. He
Right.
sort of was ahead of the audience in every way, but
He also flipped the script on
subversive.
all the like night shows.
yeah, very
like,
subversive. And I came to him later when he was doing like the Norm show and I'm Not Norm.
Right.
There was all these things. There was something incredibly deep and subtle about his comedy that I think is just a cut above the rest. You know?
Yeah, he once said about Hillary. I know every quote he ever
Mm-hmm.
says. He's like, but he said about Hillary Clinton. He says that people are gonna people hate Hillary Clinton so much that they'll vote for someone they hate more than her just to make her not president.
Mm-hmm.
That was.
His comedy touches not just like what you're feeling in your brain, but like in your soul. Like he reaches like a really subconscious level of awareness. There's something like really deep about the angle he took on things.
Yeah.
When he would say, it, you'd be like, "Did I think that? I do think that."
do think
if anything, he would implant thoughts you didn't even have, and then a
Right.
lot of comedians will say things you kind of think, and then they say them. Norm, in a way, is like, do I? I guess I do think that. Like there was a novelty to it in a way, you know. So it was very, very deep. You know?
He was very deep. I think you also never knew if he's building to a punchline, and then sometimes he say a punchline, you think he's done, and he is not done. His explanation of the joke is funnier than the joke.
Yeah, yeah.
And he'll just explain the joke right afterwards. Now it's funnier. Oh, the guy just kept going. Anyway,
There was such a confidence to it, a calmness to it. It's a comedian's comedian, you know. I mean, I haven't come across comedians who don't respect him to a very high regard.
Also, he had cancer for 9 years, didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, very Norm. That's a very Norm thing.
It was the most Norm thing ever.
Yeah, that was crazy too. Yeah, so
All right, okay, we're gonna wrap up, but I have one last question.
yeah.
Which
maybe
usually ask.
we can wrap up on a Sunny impression. I've been sitting here for a little bit.
Do you think I have a Sonny? Okay, go. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, you have a way of talking.
Oh my God!
Oh my God! I've been sitting here for a little bit. I wanted to ask you. You know, there's sort of similar way when you sit with somebody, you get exposed to sort of how they talk. You know, and I think your audience who's watching this is going to like this because it's sort of like, you know, it's sort of. I kind of knew after meeting you for 5 minutes, I was sort of going to get it a little bit. You know, a little bit of how it's hard for you to process because most people, when you do an impression to their face and there's no one else around, they can't tell if it's accurate. But we'll see from the comments. If people watch this, maybe if you clip this part up and you post it, maybe people will see that. Maybe they'll tell you that. I think it's something.
Okay.
Okay?
I don't see it.
You don't see it at all.
Right now, I'm understanding what's his name.
But you've been listening to yourself long enough. You don't know if it's really accurate. But now I'm coming at you with it. It's a lot. It's a lot to process for people. I understand. You know?
Why do you sound like the coolest guy I ever met?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe because you think pretty highly of yourself. I mean, there you go. Sonny thinks he's hot stuff. What can I tell you?
Oh,
you know?
my God.
I think with comedy, comedy is like real truth, you know? So there you go.
Dude, you can freaking do that after one conversation?
It's been a pretty long, hefty conversation. I'm sweating over here, you know?
Yeah, I wish I had the air
It's
conditioning.
okay. No, we
on.
don't want the noise on the cameras, so I can shut it off. But, you know, it was almost like you're like Jesse Itzler. You know Jesse Itzler?
No, who's that?
He's some guru. He invented, his wife invented Spanx.
He became a guru because his wife invented.
He also did other things. He wrote "Go New York, Go New York, Go." You know, the theme song for the Knicks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he did that, and he kind of talks about like seeing your parents every day, calling them every day. How many more times do you see your parents? It's kind of like in the same vocal tone as you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really.
I would check him out.
Yeah, check him out. Okay, that's it.
That's amazing. Okay, last question is rooftop moment. I mean, you have a whole people listening to you, so you don't need it so much. But like, if you had one thing to scream from the rooftops, like, what do you want to say to the world?
They're trying to kill all the Jews. If I'm talking about Hamas. End of discussion. There's nothing to talk about here. As far as the Middle East is concerned, they want to kill all the Jews. That should be a non-starter. There's nothing else to say. Anyone in solidarity with this in the slightest is in solidarity with anti-Semitism, homophobia, misogyny, the worst things, the worst kinds of culture, the worst kinds of ideas. And if you don't side with Israel in this, then you're totally blinding yourself. They're telling you how they feel. They're telling you what kind of society they would create. They want to kill all the Jews, and they say it proudly. End of discussion. How's that?
That's awesome.
To just wrap up on the Israel thing, because, you know, that brought us together here.
That is the wrap
But that's the
up.
rooftop in the moment. Like, Don't kid yourself. It's not about land. It's not about geography. It's not about politics. It's not about the Nakba or injustice or any of that nonsense. They just want to kill all the Jews, and they say it proudly. How do I know? Because it's in their founding charter. And once the Jews are gone, they'll want to take over the rest of the world and kill the Christians and even kill each other. Remember, Hamas came into Gaza and killed all their political opponents. They want to kill all the Jews. End of discussion. What are we talking about? Stop making this about nonsense. And Western countries are trying to recognize statehood. Are you out of your mind? What kind of state are you fighting for? Would a free Palestine be free at all? Would the people under a free Palestine be free? No, they would not. They would not be free. Gays would not be free. Women would not be free. Jews and Christians would not exist. And if they did, they wouldn't be free. Who's been ethnically cleansed, huh? How many Jews in Gaza? 0. How many Jews in Iraq? 400? Give me a break.
Yeah, crazy. Wow.
Projection.
Thank
and
you,
I'm
brother.
sick of it. So thanks for having me.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming. That was awesome. That was really awesome.
Thank you for this day that I've been given. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this chance to live anew.